it's grim. Just listen to John and Ben talking out the problems of this dying world again and again.
Right on.
It's a lazy day, but not anymore.
No, it's not. Man, I don't know if I'm really looking forward to this topic, but
we can make it good. we can transmute shit into gold, just like in the Holy Mountain.
Whoa.
Yeah, have you seen the Holy Mountain?
A couple times.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a fave.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's Jodorowsky, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's the only one I've seen by him.
I should see another one since I liked Holy Mountain so much.
Yeah. Same. I just don't remember. I don't know. I'm sure I could think of some other ones, but wait. Yeah, he was gonna make Dune, but he didn't make Dune, or did he?
No, but there's a documentary out about what his Dune was going to be, and that's interesting in and of itself. Partly because some of the ambition was way impossible, but also because some of the ideas and some of the concept art is really cool. I haven't seen the documentary, but I saw the trailer for it. So I guess I'm not super interested, so I guess I'm not super hyped for this one, just because it's like, oh god, here it comes. Politics.
Whoo boy. All right.
That's right, man.
That's right. So politics.
Not looking forward to touching it.
No.
Even in the abstract, it's a hot button issue.
There is basically no way to approach it that won't make somebody angry. And maybe that's true of everything.
And maybe that's fine.
Maybe it's fine.
But I'm baby. I'm small snowflake, and don't hurt me.
Yeah. Here's what you got to do, right? You got to get that audience, right? You got to get that audience, and then you got to split them. You got to split them into the ones that love you and the ones that hate you.
Right.
So that the two halves can fight against each other, and that the people that are on your side can become more invested in you so that they can fight against the ones that hate you, right? You have to make it into a war.
You have to have the benevolent and good and noble faction, teamed Wubo. And you have to have the gross, nasty, little degenerate faction, and rat men who live under a bridge somewhere, and it's their headquarters, named Ben and the Rats.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you become a thought leader.
That's right.
You have the most inflammatory opinion possible, so that the people who agree with it will be the most dedicated to it.
Yeah, and they push out everyone else who might calm the discourse until all of a sudden you are making so much on Patreon that you just can't stop raising the stakes.
I mean, if you did, they'd be mad, and they'd turn on you in an instant, because they're hungry. They want to devour someone alive.
Well, they'd be far worse than mad. They'd say, "Oh, this is getting repetitive," or they would silently slink away.
Oh, they'd be worse than mad. They'd be bored.
That's right.
I see. Well, how about So obviously the alternative, right, is to be a good boy, is to be a sweet, tender lad, and say, guys, we don't want to talk about politics because the discourse has gotten so toxic. The society is already so divided. We don't want to contribute to that. Why can't we all see that everybody's got some good ideas, and surely the solutions lie somewhere in the middle? That's a nice, safe option that won't alienate anybody.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it probably not, but uh, it's all fun and games until real material consequences cause people to be mad about the current situation.
Up. Nobody wants to hear about material consequences, John. Nobody wants to deal with that shit. We just want to be in a friendly online space that's welcoming to tankies and fascists alike.
Oh god.
So nobody's alienated. We all just get along. We can just ignore our differences and the material consequences or the material conditions that lead to our differences of opinion. Because that's hard. That's hard to engage with.
Let's not even joke about having fascists around us at all.
You're right. It's bad. It's bad and it's scary. But that's what, I mean, I saw an article referenced recently by some liberal outlet that was like, we need to start befriending neo-Nazis.
Oh.
We have to they're too big to fail. We have to get them on our side if we're going to get anywhere.
They're not nearly as stinky as those people who actually go out and protest things. And
no, not at all. And they have nice, clean-shaven sideburns.
Oh. I don't like this.
No, it's bad. All right, let's move along.
Yeah,
from that.
well, so like, yeah, let's don't be nice to fascists.
Don't be nice to fascists. Definitely don't. Bad idea. That was all. Everything I just said was facetious, by the way, in case it wasn't 100% clear.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, like, if you're doing a podcast, and gosh, would I love to just be back on episode 1, cautiously dipping our toes into the pool of podcasting and saying, "Oh, what'll we do? What'll we do?"
Yeah.
Because I don't want to talk about politics.
No. It's scary, and it's how that's how you make enemies. That's how you make enemies, is by having thoughts about things that matter.
Yeah. It's like there's actual stakes to politics, and you can't just call everyone together and say like, hey, we're more alike than different.
Well, people want to hear that there's no stakes. People want to ignore the stakes.
Well, I mean, in a way, yeah. Okay, now let's take a cynical turn. Like,
it's comforting.
If you ignore the stakes, and then all of a sudden, you're kicked off your health insurance when you desperately need an expensive treatment. The stakes have come to you. Yes,
but that's not now. That's not here in the online space. That's not here in the moment of engaging with online content, consuming, passively consuming online content that you are, part of the community of, and to acknowledge that possibility, you might have to rustle some feathers in the online space, and it would be a shame if that were to happen.
Man. And yet, like, what part of online could this not be replicated into? Like, on the one hand, I want to say, yeah, Ben, you're right. We, it is foolish to sort of say we can totally put politics out of the picture and just have, a fun diversion online. Yeah, as much as I recognize that is somewhat of a fantasy, I can easily see it taken to its other extreme, where every online space no matter what it's initially aimed at doing, whether it's some small hobby or coming around this or that, I can see all of these sort of getting converted into debate grounds.
Oh, I see. I mean, so you're saying there should be some spaces that are free of this kind of discourse. It's not appropriate everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that.
Because politics, it's not just about whether someone will get mad at you or not. It's also whether or not you will get mad. And if you're constantly engaging with just all the nastiness out there, and you're staring at it all day, I think there's a real toll there.
In terms of like peace of mind,
absolutely,
sanity. I suppose that's true.
I mean, I almost picture like I don't know if you watched the Walking Dead TV show.
No.
I don't recommend it, but like in season 2, I think there's one of the villains is this sort of commando guy who runs a really nice town for all the people under his thumb, but he's like a secret psycho who tries to keep himself hard and like mentally prepared by going into his study every evening and just staring at a bunch of gnawing decapitated zombies' heads.
Yeah. And okay, so the comparison here is that it costs him his humanity to do this.
I certainly couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And in the same way, I can't like look at all the human rights violations of the world all the time. It doesn't mean I want to ignore them.
Yeah,
but it can't be constant.
Yeah, it would definitely take its toll. I just want to feel, and maybe I'm falling into this trap, but I want to feel like I'm armed with whatever I need to rebut someone who's arguing something bad. I want to have the arsenal at my disposal to counteract some idiot spreading some idiot ideology. And I feel I don't know. I wouldn't say I don't know. I feel motivated a lot of the time to maybe not engage with like the human rights violations and like the grim part of it, but like to be thinking about ideology, maybe more in the abstract.
Well, sure. I mean, it's very cool to know the theory. That doesn't hurt, and in as far as you don't go so far down the rabbit hole that you're in that weird bubble where you're adding 4 to 5 different prefixes to every ideology you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a neo-anarcho, post-mo, bomo,
egoist,
raptor. Which I want to talk about that a little bit. I think that at a certain point it becomes obscurant on purpose.
Yeah. I think there's an element. I mean, I kind of hate to co-opt like boomer language, right? Like anti-millennial boomer language, but I think there's maybe a little bit of like special snowflake syndrome where you want to have like the most you want to have the most unique. Some people want to have the most unique label. They don't want to be like everyone else. They want to be their own thing. So they divide and divide with prefixes to find like the most unique and interesting combination of things, so they can say I'm this, and here's what it means, and then explain a bunch of stuff about it. And And also, yeah, I think it is kind of obscurant in that the more archaic or the more esoteric your self-label, the more impossible it becomes for someone to hear what you are and say, well, here's what I don't like about that, because they just won't know. Because you basically you constructed it yourself, and they will never have encountered it before.
Which is not to say that, like, people can't have extremely interesting or deep personal theories of how the world runs that are worth listening to. But it's rather to say that when you get that far into the corner of the internet where, there are a billion of those little two-colored flags that have the horizontal divide between the two colors, like ANCAP is the yellow and black one.
Yeah, we got ANCAP, ANCOM, there's anarcha-feminism. Not anarcho-feminism, anarcha-feminism. Queer
An
feminism is the pink one. What's an-prim?
Anarcho-primitivist.
Is that, what color is that? Orange?
Green, black.
Green, black, okay.
Well, nevertheless, like, without calling out any individual one, once you're getting that far into everything is completely different and not worth comparing, one of the things that it hides is the really gnarly, ideology. It obscures it loses it in a bigger and bigger sea of... There's a lot of overlap there, and I feel like, for example, basically every it's hard for me to imagine like someone who's like an anarcho-communist, like in this day and age, who isn't also, a feminist, for example, and like a probably, pro gay rights and things like that. Sure. And that's fine, but
yeah.
Okay, so one of the and again, not trying to put any of these labels under the microscope individually, but the liberal marketplace of ideas that these ostensibly exist in does a good job of masking fascist intentions, and one of the ways it can do that is to present it as just one little thing in a broad sea of ideas, just another opinion. And also it provides a refuge for people who, they were alt-right, and now that's been rightly shown to be as nasty as anything that it and as any of its predecessors. The renaming has begun, and there's all these little places for them to go.
Yeah, you mean that they can, just like in a real marketplace, you can offer the same product, but like with a rebranding and a new name, and try and sell it again. And you can do this over and over.
Well, sure. It's also tiring. Again, I just don't want to devote too much thought or time to it. And I'm glad that I've, over the past couple of years, really brought myself up to pace on a lot of political ideology. I think there's a reasonable endpoint once you get past the basics and you get an idea of who stands to benefit from the current situation. Read, the owners of all the wealth. And once you get an idea of what you feel like should be done about that, in my case, socialism or, some sort of rebalancing there. Personally, my biggest political goal is to try to raise class consciousness and just sort of let things work themselves out from there. so most of the political action that I find most effective just directly involves connecting with people who know they don't like their health insurance or the way things are, and know they don't like their boss. And even like a hardcore Republican, they bitch about their boss all the time, and it's like, well, that's not an isolated incident.
Yeah. There's a system in place that makes it this way, and like your beliefs bolster this system, and then you complain about the consequences of it. Yeah, but there's the attitude of like, oh well, this is just one bad actor. This is just like one bad outcome of a system that is fundamentally working as intended and to our mutual benefit.
Right. I try to fight the myth of meritocracy.
Yeah.
And I want to dispel the idea that, never gets spelled out too on the nose, or rarely gets spelled out too on the nose by people who care about immigration and the politics of controlling demographics. But it's not like these companies, which always need to turn a bigger and bigger profit, are going to say, oh, we did it. We solved the thing that you thought, we got rid of the people who you thought were stealing your jobs. Now everything will be good magically, even though you won't challenge companies on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously things will continue to get worse.
Yeah. People, there's a vein of thought that I have more and more become aware of, or more of a blind spot that people have, that, to have no opinion, or to have no, people think you can have no opinion or just be ambivalent about stuff, and they don't realize that to do that is just to implicitly endorse the status quo. And the status quo is, the world where the current reigning capitalists will just continue to accrue and accrue and accrue. And I don't know. People think they can hide. People think they can run and they can hide from having to have an opinion about that. But no, you're doomed. You're doomed to take a side. And what the elites want you to do is have no opinion, because that means they can. That lets them like continue unopposed. That's great for them. And
that's true. That's fair. At the same time,
mm-hmm.
I hate to circle back, but there's only so much you can do. And
there is.
You do need to. You need to avoid thinking that, like, I personally can turn the hands of society, and that because it's very easy, even if you're conscious of the fact that I'm just one person. You spend enough time fighting for this stuff, or I mean, we'll talk about fighting for it later, but specifically just reading and talking online about it, loosely doing politics, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. Sure.
True. I mean, we've been, I think there's been people that wanted us to, for example, do a socialism for a long, long time, and it hasn't happened yet, or not very much, relatively speaking. So I guess you could say that this line of thinking is it's a long legacy of disappointment that we are being born into or adopting. I
mean, even if you don't get to full on mega future space leisure socialism, you at best, and this has happened, you can affect organized effort to make things somewhat better. And for me, that starts with sort of broad scale education about who is keeping things from getting better. It's your bosses, it's your landlords, it's people who make money off of you, no matter what.
Yeah. The system is built to benefit them, and benefit they do. And yeah, I think a lot of people just maybe have never been exposed to the idea, or never thought to engage with the idea that that might be a problem. We have a social taboo against thinking about it that way.
Well, sure, because there's test cases out there where socialism doesn't do great. There are also test cases out there, I guess I should say as an aside, where it's going pretty well, and then some country, I'm not gonna say which, will intervene to fuck it up.
Yeah. That is something that I feel is a big gap in my knowledge, is like foreign policy and world history, in that arena. I don't want to get into specifics, because I it's just something I don't know a lot about, and I think I need to get more educated on that. The history of colonialism and its modern what it has become today.
That's right. But even if you don't commit to that sort of radical change, it's still just important to understand that yes, you are being exploited by the upper class. Yes, you are in a similar situation as other workers. Yes, things will get worse if they are privatized.
No, you are not just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. You are the proletariat.
And you can get mileage out of that. You can get people to see, oh geez, well, if this politician is taking money from the health insurance industry, they're not gonna produce any meaningful reform.
Yeah.
The idea that you could take on the big banks when they elected you, or they finance your campaign, it still comes around, because they want. Fundamentally, we don't have, on the left, which we are, we don't have a lot of knowledge of I don't know, the status quo out there. People still want this compromise, or this idea that, like, well, we have to win the hashtag never Trump Republicans or whatever. We have to basically be like a soft-handed version of the right to beat them electorally.
We can concede as much as necessary just to get that symbolic victory.
Right. They'll call us socialists. Oh my god.
They'll call us socialists. Oh my god.
Like they don't already.
What was that? What's that guy? Who was the guy that said that?
Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin?
Yeah.
Yeah, President-elect Joe Manchin.
Right. Not cool. Like the building, but let's not get too off topic here. The alternative is to make promises of real policies that aren't going to get beaten down by obvious conflicts of interests, to offer people something that they would want. And maybe you'll get people, even in like red states, to come out and vote where they don't normally, because they see something other than a Democrat getting up there and going, well, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I'm nice. What am I gonna do? We're gonna
not do what that guy does. Yeah. That's for sure.
I will give you a tax-advantaged savings account to deal with this whole Medicare thing.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that'll really get him to the polls. God damn it.
Yeah.
Even if you grant that, even if you say, nope, we're not going to win over, say, West Virginia or Texas or what have you with left policy, if the Republicans scream socialism like they do, even if you're right and you can't win electorally on left politics, congratulations. All you've done is let things drift further and further into unequal capitalism and let the corporate machine continue to steal people's pensions, kick people off of their health care, and just makes things worse and worse. And surprise, surprise, that's not tenable. People are going to push to the extremes as their lives are fucked up by the current state of affairs.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of the human tendency to resist change of any kind as long as things are fine. And that's,
fair.
People are content to say, well, nothing bad is happening that I can see in the current system, so the current system is working fine until, they need like an operation and they can't afford it, or they need medicine, or they get laid off with no severance pay, or some terrible consequence of neoliberal capitalism happens to them, and maybe then they'll say, oh well, maybe we do need a change. Maybe we could improve this system. But I think sometimes maybe they double down in a sort of reactionary, like, well, it happened to me, and it's fair, damn it, so it's fine if it happens to other people.
I mean, my gut wants to say no, but I know that, one of the common refrains against any sort of social program that will lift people out of poverty or end, the embarrassment of this or that or the other thing. Our health care system is embarrassing as a country. We're way behind any other first world nation. The refrain can be, oh man, I don't want the people who work at McDonald's to have this.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I paid off my student loans, so everybody henceforth must be crippled with debt.
Yeah. Like what I perceive to be a worthy person has this much under the current system. Therefore it's an injustice. It's an injustice to raise up someone who I consider below them to like a comparable level. Yeah, I see that a lot.
Yeah, especially for fights over minimum wage or basic income.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. It's like, they're lazy. I don't know. They don't always say that. They don't always say, like, the poor are just lazy or whatever. They could lift themselves up by their bootstraps. But there's a vein of that.
Well, I feel like if you call people on it, generally they do acknowledge that these jobs are a lot of work, but they just value, their time in nursing school more than that, or they say, why did I get into this when I could have been doing that?
As though raising the floor doesn't as though a rising tide doesn't lift all ships. I believe that it does.
It depends. That is typically thrown out as a defense of trickle-down economics,
I would use it to defend trickle up economics. I don't think it works with trickle down. I think we've seen. Well, okay, no. I mean, when you say that, I have heard people say that, like, yeah, as the rich get richer, well, the poor are getting richer too, and like, well, sure. And no. I've seen figures on that thrown around. It hasn't swayed me to the Reaganist side of things by any means. I'm not convinced that it's the best way to approach stuff.
I can see why, as a knee-jerk reaction, you would almost come upon that phrase and say, like, yes, this is about, creating a base of consumers that can sustain the economy, because everybody will have enough money to, shop and sustain other jobs if we're keeping capitalism.
Sure. I think if you believe in the free market, then, like, you should be excited about something like that, something like a higher minimum wage or UBI or whatever, because
especially if you're a landlord, goddamn.
Yeah. For instance, suddenly the people you want to exploit have more money, and
goes to show why, maybe this is an aside, but goes to show why it's not enough to just have UBI or a high minimum wage.
Yeah. No, that alone is not enough. Things will naturally assert themselves to recreate the most exploitative dynamic that is allowed, of course. But I mean, say you raise the minimum wage to $15, and suddenly, your burger flipper or whatever is making as much as a nurse. That might not be but let's just take that example. Well, you might see that as like, oh, well, the nurse worked harder, the nurse went to school or something. They deserve it more. They save lives. And maybe I don't not get that, but I mean, I think the consequence then is that maybe some nurses will be like, well, looking at this pragmatically, maybe they're right. Maybe the flipping burgers is like a lower energy, like it doesn't demand as much of me. Maybe I'll go do that instead because it's not as hard. I think what the result is there is like a lower supply. There is then like a lower number of people who are willing to do the, supposedly harder job of being a nurse, for no greater compensation. And I think what that forces is that those more skilled, more demanding jobs then have to pay more in order to, keep people willing to do them.
Right. I certainly don't want nurses making only $15 an hour.
No. I mean, I think that basically everyone, it would be great if everyone generally in society had their wages raised, and I think raising the floor on wages leads to that logically.
Yep. Well, it's a bunch of things that need to happen, and I feel like they need to happen all at once, and it's part of why politics is so tiring. Yes, we need to raise the floor, but we also need to do something about landlords and hedge fund managers who just leech off of work. We also need to decommodify healthcare and make it so that no company is running a profit off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
It's okay to pay
be so kind.
It's okay as an economy, as a group of people, as a nation, to say we're going to take a loss on healthcare in terms of money. We're going to pay doctors and nurses. We're going to ensure a good standard of living for them. And we will just gain our money elsewhere because the alternative kills.
Yes, definitely. We need to be more willing to. We need to look at like, well, here's what we need to do to, make society better, and then say, well, okay, this is what we need to do. Now, where do we get the money for it? instead of coming at it from the other direction of like, well, here's what we currently have the money to do, and let's not consider any option that we can't currently do under like the way things are organized presently.
That's right. Because to go back to the fast food thing, there's an adage that companies want poor employees and rich customers. And so you kind of have this tragedy of the commons effect where every company wants to pay its workers less, give them less of the money that they bring in. Or automate things, not knowing that, if all of you fuckers automate and we have no solution for providing for people who can't, find a job when there aren't hardly any of them.
Yeah.
Your fancy fucking self-checkout machine is not going to get use. It's going to just be dead. You're not going to have the customers. You're not going to make the money.
When you say tragedy of the commons, what exactly is the tragedy of the commons? Okay. I've heard, I have a general idea of what it means.
So it's a description of a sort of social or economic dynamic that's origin is kind of based on a not entirely true. Well, it's based on an untrue thing about commonses, or the commons. That was to say common land before all land was privately owned, where the poor or the common person could just sort of farm and make subsistence for themselves.
Yeah.
The idea that people would all use the space greedily, and if only one person starts to get greedy with it, then everybody is in an arms race to fight over that space. In practice, what actually happened with the commons is that rich people just started to section it off, and it wasn't destroyed by people who were using it in a common way at all. It got sectioned off, and then everybody who used to subsist off of that type of farming just had to go work in a factory.
Yeah. Because of private ownership.
Right. But the dynamic that Tragedy of the Commons describes is one in which bad actors benefit so much that your choices are either to follow along or be ruined.
That just kind of seems like capitalism. That just seems like it's that just seems like it's describing the dynamic of, like, the wealthy, buy up private property, the wealthy control the economy, and you must engage with that or die. You must function within, capitalism according to capitalist ethics, whether you agree with them or not.
Well, I mean, so the context in which I brought it up is just like, to me, the perfect example. If one company automates and they're paying less for wages, they free up all this money to fight their competitors in other ways. They can lobby more politicians. They can operate at a loss for a while to put the screws to the smaller businesses around them. It really does. It really does incentivize something very negative that won't work if everybody does it.
Yeah. Well, I understand the phrase now. That is
good to know.
Yeah. Boy. So, all right. It's time to get down to brass tacks. Should we discuss politics on Grimp? The unanswered question.
Oops. Looks like we did.
We got a little sidetracked there.
I mean, that's how tempting talking about politics is.
Yeah.
You say, okay, no, I'm just going to chill today. I'm not going to talk about this stuff. But the reason why you get pulled in is the same reason why it's so important to take some time away from it too, because it feels so high stakes. It's so unlookawayable, and not in like a good way.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of like it's kind of like sports in that there is no end to the amount of discussion that can be had.
Well, that boggles my mind, because I'm not a big sports watcher, so
Sure.
You're right, but like, yeah, I just don't get it.
I'm also not a big sports watcher, but there are more stats. There are more like sabermetrics tracked in like baseball, say. Like you could spend the rest of your life just like looking at statistics being tracked and discussing. I mean,
some people do it as a game. There's fantasy
football,
sports and everything like that.
Yeah. It is. I would infinitely scalable be the right phrase. It can consume as much of your life as you want it to, and there will never be a time when it's like, well, there's no more.
I don't know. I guess so. I mean, it's certainly true for politics. Even like a subsection, if you really get out there and educate yourself, you could spend all your time worrying just about global warming or what have you.
Yeah.
And God, do I worry about that sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's the appeal. It's not just like, oh man, I can really squeeze this stress ball forever. It's not just like, oh, there's always something more to see. It's that, like, if somebody brings up global warming or something like that, you feel almost compelled to say your piece, because you don't want it to go wrong. And it's the same for anything. The same for how I feel about labor and capital or immigration. It's just, oh, okay, well, I want to talk about this in a way that isn't recreational. It's almost some debate me shit, Oh, debate me. But like, I don't know, the stakes are high. It pulls you in.
Yeah. Well,
and yet the stakes are also not high. I mean, like, honestly, if I'm bickering with my roommate or whoever about politics, there's really no reason for it to ever get heated, because it's two people in a blue, like a solidly blue state.
Yeah, that's true.
It truly doesn't matter.
Individual actions are weak.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I guess if you wanted to, you could look at it like this, and I don't know how healthy of a way to look at it this is, but like this is like a broad. I almost hate to use the phrase, but you could look at it as a culture war in which no individual actor. Yeah, I know it's ugly.
Sorry, go on.
No, you're right. It's like no individual actor is like gonna win it, but like we have to fight it on every front all the time, to advance the discourse. Like tribes of ants, right? Do you know that ants are organized into like broad tribes that like take up like large sections of like geography? Like certain parts of America are like dominated by one tribe of ants and other parts by another. And there are literally like battle frontiers that these tribes of ants continually march towards, and like just fucking eat each other, trying to like push their territory further into the other guy's territory.
I think I read that article. I believe the study that they did was more localized to California, but
okay.
I'm sure it's true everywhere else. I just wanted to maybe dispel the notion that there's like 2 or 3 big old tribe of ants that dominate the entire United States.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how many there are.
Right.
I'm sure that this is an ant dynamic that plays itself out in like larger or smaller scale.
I'm being picky here.
Sure. But that's what I'm you could look at it like that. Like, maybe you're just one ant, but it's your duty to continually fight on behalf of your team.
Sure. I mean, because as I said earlier, my main goal and where I feel most effective is trying to raise class consciousness, because once you make fertile ground for socialism, even if you don't get some sort of new system wherein you've done away with landlordship, or you've decommodified housing, medicine, or stuff like that, but you get people who get it, and from that you really feel like anything could spring out of it. Anything good could spring out of it. You could get better unions, tenants unions, organizing on all sorts of fronts, because people realize that this is unnecessary. That the problems that we have right now are not inevitable.
That's what's frustrating, is that once it occurs to you that maybe it's not necessary, you look back, or maybe this is just my experience, but you look back at basically a lifetime of just taking it for granted. Oh God, I'm gonna sound so pretentious right now, but I'm just gonna go deep dive into it, and I apologize.
Oh dear.
Honestly, this is how it feels. I'm not saying it's how it is, but how it can feel to me is that, like, you suddenly get woke, right? And you're like, wait a minute, we didn't need landlords, we didn't need bosses, right? And then you look back and it's like, I just assumed these were things that were just, this is the nature of the universe, right? That these things were called for and society couldn't exist without them. And then you're like, and then it's like Plato's analogy of the cave, right? And you're out in the sun, and you gotta go back, and you gotta go back in there and, like, get these idiots who are looking at shadows on the wall and try and drag them out. Be like, look, the sun, my friend.
Oh, sure, definitely.
Yeah.
It really does make you feel like a veil has been lifted. You know, you're seeing things how they really are. Mm-hmm. But we have to be careful, because we're not the only game in town that has an answer for everything. There's the far right who has its own. They
are also red-pilled. They have also taken the red pill, you might say.
Right. That's how they categorize it.
Exactly.
And so,
and you run the risk. I don't know, if you look at it like that, you definitely run the risk of coming off as, you're condescending. You're like, you think people that don't see it the way you see it are idiots, and if you come off that way, it's very bad, and it doesn't make people want to agree with you, doesn't make people want to consider your ideas. I suppose it's a temptation to be resisted.
Don't be weird.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, like, I bring this up not just because it's important to stay grounded, but also because we need to be wary of the people who are, as you said, red-pilled.
Yeah.
They've got a totally different theory of, like, who's fucking it up. And to me, it's so obviously wrong, because, like, from the left, we say, from the socialist perspective, we say, look who benefits from the current situation. That's who, look at the people who have actual power. Mm-hmm. Look at the people who wield it to enrich themselves.
Yeah.
The far right likes to pick its scapegoats differently, and they're dangerous for that. They like to pick people who are marginalized and vulnerable and could be beaten up on.
Yeah. I think there is a sort of vein of thought in that crowd, and not even in, like, the most extreme of that crowd, just sort of in that sort of general sphere, where, like, if you vilify the powerful, then you're sort of preemptively preventing yourself from gaining power. And, like, in your mind, if you were powerful, if you were in charge, you could fix things, right? You could do it right, you would make it better. So you don't want to do that because you would only be hamstringing your future self in, the future that you imagine in which you are the powerful.
Well, sometimes it's even pettier than that. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, my menial jobs will be taken by immigrants.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh no. Yeah, and that's the like, that's like the powerful just pitting the weak against each other. So they fight each other, and they don't look at like what's actually the problem.
Yeah,
and
it's scary.
And the status quo just remains. Yeah, it is. That is scary. Yikes.
It's scary because I don't think it takes a lot of effort on the part of the powerful. It's
No.
just a gut reaction that's out there, and it doesn't need to be fed a lot for it to spread.
I mean, you can't fight the powerful, but you can totally fight against your fellow marginalized. You're on the level playing field. You can take a swing and actually leave a dent.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Not a great analogy there.
No?
Well, yeah, but like just visceral, Ben.
Right. Yeah. It's gross.
Yeah, and you play that game. This is why I said earlier, it's important to spread class consciousness, because you've got to dispel the myth that like if you expel the right people who compete with you for jobs, that all of a sudden you'll be set.
Yeah.
If you spent your energy punching down in that way and honestly defending the powerful, you shouldn't be surprised when they don't magically give you the dream jobs that you're hoping for.
There's a in a hierarchical system, if you are not at the absolute bottom, then you're at least on top of somebody. And that, you don't want to lose that, because if you lose that, you'd be at the bottom again. And then people like you would be punching down at you. And no. You want to stay on top of at least somebody that you can keep punching, I guess.
Man. Yeah, it's tough. And it's why I don't like to it's why I'm trying to take a break from politics here and there, because it's too much to look at. It's too much to think about all the time.
It is. It's too big. It's like I'm trying to it's like Yog Sothoth or some you look at it, you gaze upon the entirety of its being, and it's too much to handle, and your fucking eyes explode and you go insane.
Sure. Because
if you could truly comprehend the enormity of it, your mind would fragment. And
again, like it's the feeling that you need to confront all these things at once, and that if any of these other problems persist, they'll make all the other situations worse. If we increase the floor but don't decommodify healthcare, or we fix the border situation but we don't fight for fair treatment of labor, like these things could play off of each other in negative ways, and it's kind of a leap that needs to happen all at once.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you then. I mean, okay, do you think that it's dangerous to push for any one of these like more progressive policies if only one were to happen, if it would not, like if they all need to happen at once, is it dangerous to push for maybe like just privatize or not unprivatizing healthcare even in the absence of other
well, that one I feel
things.
like it stands like it's so equal that it stands pretty well alone. I do worry about providing or demilitarizing the border without creating a sort of livable floor, because then you could see the resentment really go nuts. And I guess, I mean, without climate change being addressed in a meaningful way, it will just be so destabilizing that we don't know what the fuck will happen.
That one is, man, I sometimes feel like, maybe we should, that one's not the most pressing issue in my life personally, but maybe it on like a global scale it is the most pressing, and maybe it should trump all other things. But then if I think about, I mean, if we decided like we're not going to do anything else, we're just going to focus on climate change, no other, I mean in reality we don't have to just do one thing, we could do multiple things, but
right. If we have to be careful about what Jon Stewart called the bullshit of infinite possibility. Well, why are you doing this when you could be doing that? Like, it's a fallacy.
Yeah, true. Okay, well then I guess I just think we definitely need to do something. Doesn't they say that in like 10 years or 12 years it'll be too late? Like we have to like reduce carbon emissions like in the next decade.
Yep. Which is not to say that day after tomorrow will happen immediately on year 12 or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
no.
We will be on a serious collision course with a lot of people being displaced.
Mm-hmm.
And if we haven't dealt with some sort of egalitarian mode of living, and we don't have any if we still have the poor competing for livelihood, it will definitely get ugly, as far as I can tell.
Yeah I mean, they like, I don't know exactly which areas, but like I know that like Miami will be like destroyed. Probably a lot of Florida, probably a lot of California, maybe,
a lot of coastals. A lot of people live along the coast.
Yeah.
A lot of cities are not that far off the water.
And it's like, maybe if you don't live in one of these areas, you might think, you might feel like it's not your problem, but like, we've got a refugee crisis, like a worldwide refugee crisis right now, and like imagine that, but like imagine you're an American. Like, imagine if the refugees are other Americans, and that crisis is like just in your own country. That's happening. It's bad. It'd be a really bad scene. It should be avoided at all costs. Hot take, I know.
Most definitely. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for climate change, it's just you're up against. Like, most people care about it, or won't believe it till they see it, and only a few are stridently like, well, and they're going to tell you about some study that got funded by oil.
Yeah.
But most people, it's don't care, or it's we gotta fucking do something.
There's a vein of criticism that says that it is, maybe it's happening, but it's not man-made. There's no proof that human intervention is causing it, and it's natural, right? This is just like the natural progression of climate, and it's inevitable, and it's not our fault, and there's nothing we can really do about it. Which is, I'm pretty sure the science is pretty strongly against that.
ExxonMobil internally did a study where they figured out and what would happen like in the early 70s or so, and it's more or less spot on.
You mean that it's
in terms of emissions and global temperature? Yeah.
As in it's continued to follow the trajectory that they predicted, and
that's right.
Logical conclusion of that is disaster.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm pretty sure Trump is one of these it's not man-made guys.
Trump just believes whatever someone told him most recently.
Yeah. That's sure. So of course that's going to be what big oil or whatever wants him to think.
Yep, I mean, and they've gotten him to do a bunch of things to, like, sabotage the green jobs industry.
Mm-hmm.
Real great stuff.
Top notch.
So how do you feel now?
Well, do you mean in general, or do you mean about
how's your
something
mood right at the moment?
My mood right at the moment is good. It's it's maybe a little bit stressed by the enormity of the issues, but like I feel maybe some amount of relief from discussing them.
Oh, that's good. It's good that you're getting it off your chest. Too much of this can really bug me out. I
get that. I like hearing your thoughts on these things because I don't know. You're generally, I would say we're generally in agreement on a lot of broad issues, but I feel like you kind of, I don't know, we don't have the exact same perspective, and like maybe you have slightly different priorities in which of these issues you would come at like first, like what order? I don't know. Do you feel that way?
Sure, yeah, totally. I mean, it's good to discuss it with friends. It's good to discuss it with not friends every once in a while too. If you come out with something that you think is a good argument and you get a response that you just don't even understand, it's fertile ground for digging in and learning more.
Yes, I had that experience fairly recently. But arguing with someone who is on the other end of the spectrum, it can be very, very draining, very frustrating, and confusing, and there can be times when you're like, where did this come from? This is what?
Mm-hmm.
I heard someone, oh god, I don't know if I want to go into the specific details.
Let's not.
Okay, let's not. But I heard some weird stuff
right.
lately, and it left me changed as a human. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
That's
man.
maybe an exaggeration, but it was definitely some shit I'd never thought about before, and I didn't like it.
Well, I guess that's good for you.
Maybe
in moderation.
Yeah.
So, should we talk about politics?
Definitely not.
No.
Definitely.
No, this is the last politics episode of Grimp.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've pretty much solved all the issues at this point, and like, what else is there to even say?
It's morning in America.
We've solved the problems.
The nightmare is over.
It's the end of history. We made it.
We did it.
We fixed climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Fixed capitalism.
Gave racism an old bump on the noggin.
Yeah.
Hey, cut it out, you. You have similar socioeconomic status to them.
Yeah.
So bond over that.
Bond over that, please. Just play nice.
Gosh. Yeah. So it's a Sisyphean task.
It is. It is, but
your best work is not good enough, and the only solace that you have is that you didn't do nothing.
Yes.
I feel,
it does make me feel good to feel like I am not doing nothing, even if what I am doing is, minuscule, so as to be lost basically in the it's just a grain of sand on the beach.
Naturally, yeah. Even if you reach 1,000 or 10,000 people, it's like really small still. But it helps. I feel really good if I go out and do public demonstrations, if go to a rally or a protest of some form or another. Because at that point, you're surrounded by people who are also incensed about the same thing, and you're making a much bigger public stand about this sort of thing. That any sort of organizing you can involve yourself in, or any sort of way that you can do politics offline. is comforting in a way that screaming into the void or liking liking the right tweets or whatever meager thing you do online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but doing it online really does just feel like trying to fight the ocean,
and that sucks.
It does, 'cause like there's often no feedback. There's no
or if there is, sometimes it's like I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's very scary. I don't want to receive death threats or nasty DMs. Positive DMs are okay, I guess. Yeah. But even then, it's like, what if it's buttering me up for nasty DMs?
Yeah. There's sometimes you'll get someone who's like, I don't know. Sometimes you get like a glib response that is sort of like agreeing with you ironically, and that can feel really bad.
Really?
Like like they know, like, I don't know, if I get someone who agrees with me ironically, it almost feels worse. Well, I don't know. It feels maybe not worse, but it feels bad in a different way from someone who just like says that I'm stupid or something, or just openly be like, this is dumb.
It's like, oh yeah, sure, because
an ironic agreement sort of like doesn't even engage with the idea on its own terms. It just sort of dismisses the idea out of hand and like sort of puts it like below a genuine response, which is kind of more insulting than a direct insult. Or a direct, I disagree, I think this is dumb.
Well, hey, man. I mean, don't let any of it get to you. That's...
I don't really. But you know, that's how I feel about it.
Well, I mean, my current job is very high stress at times. And sometimes, you know, I'm at a real, like, verbal altercation with someone, and I don't want to go into the specifics, but like having that happen a lot, or having a nasty incident happen at your place of work, that's just par for the if it's just par for the course. The important thing to do is to sort of leave it at the door and not, you know, let any of those emotions follow you home. And one of the ways in which this can be so, you know, troubling is that if you bring politics into your online time, there's no leaving it.
It's true.
You go out of the house, you're wearing politics on your hip at your smartphone. Oh God, am I making a big old Banksy veer into like smartphones?
No, I don't think you're quite there yet.
But it's important to be able to like leave it in a space.
Yeah, for sure. And
that's a benefit of doing direct action.
Mm-hmm.
It has an end point and a start point.
They if you I mean, right, engaging with this stuff because of the scale, it's like emotional and intellectual labor, right? Like it's labor of a sort, and you know, you can't expect anyone and you can't expect yourself to be, you know, to just have infinite stamina for this or anything.
And your opponents will seem to have infinite stamina because there's a lot of them and they change out, or maybe you find someone who really does have a zazz for this that I certainly don't. And that can be even tiring in and of itself. Like, oh my God, these people are just dedicated to spreading this out. They're spreading the wrong fucking thing even when I'm not there because of how much they like doing it.
They're spreading the wrong fucking thing, and there's so many of them, and there's only one of me.
Right. Yeah. Even if there aren't, if they seem to be catching a foothold on your favorite Discord server or whatever your online space is, that can be really, that can really bum out. That can really bum you out, and that can ruin your fun. To say the least.
For sure. Man. Yeah. I guess this does kind of bleed into, it can come in to a place, to like a social place, or like a place of leisure. It can invade that and suddenly it's like more work is demanded of you at a time when you didn't sign up for that.
Right. I mean, for what it's worth, we haven't really talked about the value of moderating things, but
no.
You don't necessarily want to stand up all the time so much as you want to be in a place where, like, there's not little jabs getting thrown out into the open, and going uncontested, and you worry, like, oh god, let this go for a couple months and it's 4chan.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What a bummer.
Yeah. But I mean, the only alternative, right? I mean, if you let it go, you let it go, and it becomes like that.
Mm-hmm. It's one person with a Pepe avatar.
But if you don't let it go, then you're also right. Then someone will you got to jab back, and someone will say, "Oh, well, you're engaging with this too. Like, you're also part of the problem."
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes two to tango.
You risk being on one of both sides.
Yeah.
One of the both sides.
Yeah, and God, there's nothing worse than being on either side. But there's no escape. There's no escape, and I think that's what we've learned here today.
Oh God! See, now I feel really bummed out.
Oh yeah. Whoops. But no, I mean,
because on the other side of the coin, like, yeah, I don't want to do politics on Grimp, but if we're reaching people, is it abdication of duty to not say something, even if it's just in passing, like, hey, you know, this is Grimp, we've settled in on talking about obscure RPGs or some other niche topic, but we just want to take an aside and say, like, I don't know, fuck Milo Yiannopoulos or some other thing of the day. Who knows what sort of scandal will come out in the future.
Yeah. I think it would be weird to not say anything like that about something that was, like, going on, that we were hearing about, that was being talked about. I guess I do feel like it would sort of be not a dereliction of duty, but almost like a sort of deliberate, like, a deliberate act of, like, non-activism to, like, stop oneself from saying something like that. Fuck this dumb shit that Paul Joseph Watson did and everyone is mad about it or whatever.
Right, but if you let it go too far, then all of a sudden, yes, every time, you know, we're ostensibly like an arts podcast, but every so often, or like a half the time, we're just like, special report, this bad thing happened, that bad thing happened. All of a sudden, you've talked yourself into something that maybe is already preaching to the choir, first of all, and second of all, is a great way to ruin one's own leisure time, which is important. You know, we're people, we're not authorities, certainly, and I don't want to make it seem like a tiny audience has gone to our heads. You know, this is for fun.
Yeah.
Maybe I think the solution is just, let's do our thing, and we'll be the ones doing the jabs. We'll if I throw something out about, oh God, and by the way, we have fucking, not death camps, but concentration camps on our soil in America right now, which we do, we'll be the ones throwing that out there, at the very least.
Sounds good, man.
But mostly, we'll just have fun.